Hello, and welcome to the Write Club podcast, where we take you behind the pages and into the fascinating world of writing. I'm Mary, and I'm joined, as always, by my co host Beth. Hi, Beth, how are you?
Hi, Mary. Yeah, I'm really good, thank you. Today we're joined by debut novelist Samantha York. Hi, Samantha. Welcome to the Right
Hi.
podcast.
Hi. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, thanks so much for joining us. Where is it that you're joining us from today?
I'm joining you from Glasgow today. It's where I've lived for the last 10 years.
Brilliant. I've actually just been in Edinburgh, so I've been up your neck of the woods this week.
Oh, lovely. It's very cold up here at the moment.
Very cold.
Absolutely
Lovely
freezing.
though. Although it was actually, because we're obviously a lot further south, it
Hmm.
rained in my hometown the entire time I was away, and we had lovely blue skies in Edinburgh. So
Oh,
Oh,
perfect.
that makes a change.
yeah, it was lovely.
So, Samantha, I was just saying to you how much I'd enjoyed the novel, The Foreshore. Please, could you tell the listeners a little bit about it?
Of course. Thank you. I'm glad that you're enjoying the novel. The Foreshore is set on a very remote island in the Scottish Hebrides at the turn of the 18th century. It's very much about the clash between old and new ways of thinking, old and new cultures, which are embodied by the two main characters. So there's the character of Flora, who is an elderly islander who has recently suffered a bereavement, the loss of her child, and she comes into contact with another character who is central to the novel, who is the Reverend Thomas Murray, who has been sent from the mainland to almost try and convert the local population from more paganistic ways into the way of the Reformed Scottish Church. And obviously, he comes into conflict with the traditions, kind of superstitious beliefs of the islanders. And he and Flora discover a young woman washed up on the foreshore who is mute and clearly has gone through some sort of trauma. And both him and Flora try to uncover who she is, which unearths a lot of buried secrets, not just to do with the island itself, but to do with them and their past and murky histories. And it also stirs up talk of witchcraft, which all sort of builds up throughout the novel and without giving too much away, culminates in quite a dramatic, tense conflict between these two characters.
Oh, brilliant. That's fascinating description there. And we featured you in one of our recent Path to Publication features. And you mentioned that one of the pieces of feedback that you got about the novel was that it was too dark, which I found really surprising because the undercurrent, pun intended, of foreboding is absolutely crucial to the feel of the whole novel and pitch perfect, in my opinion. So, what advice would you give to writers when we receive comments like this, and how can we continue with our convictions for our writing?
Yeah, well, it, it was a bit of a surprising comment, because I've always been drawn towards darker fiction. I mean, I do like a light read occasionally, but generally speaking, I do read more dark literature. I'm really into horror, especially when it's linked to historical fiction. So for me, I was just writing what felt real to me and what I enjoyed writing. And I would say to any writer that's really important. Don't write something that you don't enjoy. Um, so if somebody says you've got to kind of separate opinion from criticism. And, obviously all criticism is valid and not everybody's going to enjoy the same kind of literature you are. They're not going to enjoy the same genres. So a lot of it is going to be down to personal taste. But sometimes you've got to kind of separate, like if you're getting criticized on things like characterization, pacing, those things are really important. Take all that feedback on board. But I think if you're hearing something quite disheartening, like, oh, well, it's too dark, try not to be concerned too much about marketability at an early stage. Write what you enjoy. And Later on, if you need to tweak things, once you're lucky enough, if you're lucky enough to get an agent, get a publishing deal, then you can tweak things then. But when you're in the process of writing, don't be afraid of writing what feels true to you, even if you think that might not appeal to others, because there are always going to be people who will enjoy what you enjoy. There's always going to be a readership for your novel, as long as you have the ability to write. So yeah, it can be disheartening when you hear that, but then, like I say, you've got to separate out personal preference and criticism regarding the actual meat and bones of the novel itself. So yeah, my advice is write what feels true to you, write what you enjoy, worry about things like marketability later. I mean, obviously, it's very important to research your audience, but yeah, try not to be too distressed if somebody just doesn't like this your story because of genre or tone necessarily, I would say.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
very
that's
good
great
advice.
advice.
Yeah.
Because everybody is very individual with what they like you say. And I feel like from a writing point of view, if you enjoy it, what you're writing, you're getting something from it without selling a copy. But if you're writing something to sell it that you don't enjoy and it doesn't sell still, you've got nothing. So you've not
Absolutely.
enjoyed it and you've not made a sale.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
And it probably comes across, doesn't it, in the writing? Yeah.
Oh, totally. I mean, if you're not enjoying the writing, then it really is pointless.
Mhm.
That
Yeah.
has to be the priority. I mean, especially if you're a debut novelist, you haven't even been published yet, then publishing is very hard to get into. So, like you say, you don't want to end up writing something and, not being fortunate enough to get published, but not having enjoyed the experience. It's about the experience of writing. That's the most important thing when you're in those early stages.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. In this novel, the sense of place is really important, as is the historical setting. How did you go about doing the research for both aspects of the story?
They're very important aspects to me. I've always been hugely into history, especially history of kind of working class, ordinary people. I'm really interested in folklore. So I did a lot of research around the folklore of the Scottish Highlands and Islands. I read a lot of books as well about, in particular, a group of islands called St. Kilda, which are way off the west coast of Scotland. Like it takes, I think it's the nearest island is the Isle of Harris in the Outer Hebrides, and it takes about 3 to 4 hours to get there on a boat now from there. So it's very, very remote. It is uninhabited now. I think it was evacuated in the early 20th century, but there was a population of people living there for centuries and they were very, very isolated. Didn't really have much connection to the mainland for a long time until the church started sending missionaries there. So I did a lot of research into St. Kilda, read a lot of literature on it, visited museums, looked at archival information, and one of the things which I find extremely important if you're trying to get a sense of time and place is go beyond just the literature. Look at the actual cultural artifacts and remnants of that society. So, for example, go onto YouTube and look up, in my case, like folk songs. Look at the lyrics and listen to the music and like look at archive footage, so you can see what people are wearing, what people are doing. That to me, that's the most important thing is you can get things wrong with historical accuracy, but to me, what takes me out of a historical novel is when it doesn't feel authentic to the period. So if they're wearing something that just doesn't feel right, or if they use an expression which doesn't feel quite authentic to the time and place. That to me is the most important. So I think it's really vital for authors to fully immerse themselves in that era and in that place. And we've got the internet now, so it's so much easier to do that. And yeah, to me, that's the most valuable research I did was just getting immersed in looking at, like I say, archive footage, listening to the music, also visiting places as well is very important. I mean, in the case of St. Kilda, it's very difficult to visit. I did attempt it, but unfortunately, COVID got in the way.
Oh no.
Um, and even if COVID doesn't get in the way, it's the weather makes it very difficult to visit. But definitely visit places which are similar to the settings of your novel. I like visited like Highland Folk Museum, which is a museum dedicated to what life was like in the Highlands in the sort of 17th, 18th centuries. You can go into reconstructed black houses, so being able to smell the smoke and like feel the thickness of the air and like actually experiencing that to me is really important because that it's almost like sensory research. I would strongly advise anyone who's, especially if you're writing historical fiction, go to locations, get a sense of the place, a real feel of the place, and look at pictures, um, find artifact, go to museums and look at artifacts from that time, from that era. To me, that gives you a far more thorough grasp of the era than just reading through books. As important as that is, I
Hmm.
think to me that was the most valuable research that I did.
I
Yeah.
think that really comes across as well. You know, there's a lot of descriptions of the outfits that the women in particular wear. I imagine it's some kind of big shawl that they're wrapping around themselves and then walking through the very smoky houses, the crofts. I could really feel all of that. It felt quite oppressive, and also the meals that they were eating. I could
Mm.
really there was sort of a queasiness to the seabird description.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Especially, I mean, like I say, if you're setting your novel in quite uh, a place or a time that's quite removed from ours, then yeah, you do have to immerse yourself more in those aspects of it. Like so, like you say, the what they were eating. Um, because St. Kilda, their main source of food was seabird colonies. They were basically entirely existing on gannet meat and eggs. And I think there's one island off the Hebrides that still hunt gannets. And I think there is a restaurant that actually does serve it, but I've not heard good things. I can't, I mean, if you ever go to a seabird colony and you smell it, I can't
Yeah.
imagine it tastes all that good.
No.
So yeah, getting those finer details, I think that's what makes it more immersive.
Yeah, for sure. And there's some things that you just cannot get from the internet as well, or watching a YouTube video. You do have to physically go there and find out. Did you taste any of these things?
No.
Okay, thank God.
No, I mean, even if I'd wanted to, I didn't have the opportunity. I mean, where would you? There's very few places. Like I say, I think there's one place you can go to try this.
Unless you go catch it yourself, but
Yeah, I'm not too keen on that experience either when you think of how they actually caught them and the cliffs that they had to scale. So, yeah, there are some experiences I'm never going to have myself, but I can fill in the blanks with um archive research.
yeah.
That's when the books come in useful.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And what is your background? Is being a writer something that you've already always dreamt of?
Um, Vaguely. For a long time, maybe probably from when I was in my early teens. I've always loved reading. Always been passionate about literature and history as well. I just loved stories. I loved hearing stories. I loved telling stories. So history naturally really appealed to me because you're hearing stories from the past that actually happened, and oftentimes the true stories are more interesting than the fictional ones. So that always appealed to me, and I always wanted to kind of tell stories of my own. And I did do a lot of creative writing when I was younger, but it was never a specific aim until I think much later. So Foreshore was my first attempt at a novel, and it's the first one that I managed to properly, well, write, and it wasn't just an idea, it was fully fleshed out. So it didn't really become an aim until then. I can't pinpoint an exact time, but it was always kind of like a vague longing, but never, it never felt like a realistic ambition up until the point where I was writing the foreshore and I thought, oh, I'm actually going to finish this. Maybe I should do something with it. I mean, especially after attending some writing courses as well and getting that kind of reassurance from professionals that, oh, actually, your writing is decent. It's not, it's not too amateurish. You could go forward with, a publication ambition. So yeah, once I'd got that kind of feedback, then it became more real. But I suppose it was always there in the background. I always wanted to tell stories, even if that wasn't fully realized as I want to be a writer.
And then
Yeah.
what was your route to publication after getting to that point?
Um, so very much just the traditional slog of going through agents, which, is it's long and you're going to get rejections. I would say to any debut writer that you have to just live with rejection. And if you are confident enough in your writing, and if you've had feedback, like I say, feedback's really important. I wouldn't just send manuscripts out without getting some form of feedback from more than just family and friends as well, if you can, professional feedback. And that is easier to do these days with the internet because there's writing groups, writing courses that you can join. There's, even subreddits, things like that. So it is easier to get feedback. So I would definitely do that first, which is what I did I did a writing course with Curtis Brown Creative, which I would recommend. And then started sending out to agencies, having obviously put together, a synopsis and a cover letter and everything. And then you just have to wait. You just have to be prepared to wait and just keep going with it. Um, and hopefully at some point you'll be lucky enough to hear an acceptance. From there as well, you think that, okay, that's brilliant, amazing. I've got an agent. That is the hardest part, but don't think it's going to be a quick process after that. Realistically, it takes a long time. So it was still months after that till I got a publisher. Because so my agent would send out to different publishers. Eventually, I got my publisher, and then it took over a year after that for it to actually get on a bookshelf. So it takes a long time, even when you've got your agent, which is brilliant. Don't think it's just going to happen overnight. There's a lot of things that need to take place before the book actually is published. So I hope that wasn't too negative.
No, definitely not.
We
Just
want to know,
fabulous.
it's different for everybody, but we do hear a lot of the same, that it's a long, long slog and you've got to be prepared for that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say, like on a positive side, don't be disheartened because for most people, it's a long slog. Just
Yeah.
be prepared for that. That's all I would say is just, yeah, be prepared for that long slog. If you're going to go through traditional publishing, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, something that not many of the people that we've had on this podcast have spoken about different writing courses that they've done. And that's something that a lot of our listeners and a lot of our audience are really interested in. And it's also really important for our listeners to show that you didn't just start writing one day and then, oh, okay, you're amazing. It's one of those things that you do have to keep doing it, and you have to learn, and you have to put yourself on these courses to be able to get better and learn more things. So what would you be able to tell us a little bit about that course? Was it like an online thing, or did it take a while to complete?
Absolutely. I mean, so Curtis Brown Creative offer a lot of different courses. I mean, they do cost money, but you can take a shorter course, which is what I did. And they not only are they less expensive, but they're also tailored towards specific genres. So I did the writing course on historical fiction, which was really useful because not only did it go into the craft of structuring your writing, but also those important points unique to that genre. So in this case, how to incorporate your research into your narrative, things like that. But I would say that the most valuable thing that I got from that course was feedback, not only from tutors, but from other writers on the course as well. You would have a session every week, and after each session, you would have an assignment, which would be to post, usually, so say the first chapter of your novel, that could be one of the assignments, and you would have to provide one piece of feedback to one fellow writer each week as well. So it meant that you got quite varied set of feedbacks, like set of comments on your novel that are more than just, oh, this is really good, oh, well done you, because I think you can fall into that trap if you're just getting feedback from friends and relatives. So yeah, you get more in-depth pointers. So I would definitely recommend taking a writing course. I think to me the most important thing is the feedback. It points you in the right direction, and it can also give you the confidence to know what you need to do to be successful and that you can be successful. So yeah, I think that was invaluable to me. And I would totally recommend it. But yeah, there's other courses online as well, that are, you know, reasonably priced. You can get, and like I say, you can get free feedback from a lot of writing forums. So it is accessible. You
Mhm.
just have to look into it. Again, do a bit of research into what's going to fit you best, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And it's worth noting as well that Writers Online, we do offer courses as well. So they're all personalized to each person and each individual. And similar to Curtis Brown, um you get to do your assignments and you get feedback from people. And we also have a separate service where you can have your writing critiqued by a professional writer. So if anybody is looking for feedback on their manuscript, then if you just head to Writers Online, then you can get that from there as well. So yeah, I think that's really helpful for our listeners to hear that there are those options out there to get better, to learn, and to give yourself the best chance in getting published. Um, but yeah, so moving on a little bit, what does a typical, if there is such a thing, writing day look like to you?
I think that's a good point, is that there is no typical writing day, especially at the moment. It depends. At the moment, my life is quite chaotic because I had a baby 3 months ago, and there's a lot of stuff going on, so it means that I haven't got a strict, rigid regimen like I would like to have when it comes to writing. When I was writing the Foreshore, I wrote every single day. Um, I have not been writing every single day, but you just have to. I think I would advise anyone who's going through a kind of tumultuous period or chaotic period in their life, just accept that. Don't beat yourself up, because it's so easy to do. Uh, Sometimes life happens and you can't have a strict, you know, structured day of writing each day. It just can't happen. So don't be disheartened when it comes to that. I'm trying not to be. That's what I'm trying to tell myself anyway. Um, when, I mean, things are starting to get a bit calmer now, but when I was writing the foreshore, certainly what I would do is, to me, my most precious commodity is less about word count, it's more about time and time management, especially when your time is limited. If you're working full time, if you've got family, then this is not for everyone, but this is what I prefer. Some people are like, I'm going to write 1,000 words every day. Um, that's never been for me, because sometimes you start writing and you could be writing for 5 hours and have 1,000 words, or you could be writing for half an hour and have 1,000 words. It just depends on the day. So that just didn't work for me. For me, I would set myself a time and I would put an alarm on so I knew I have to spend that time writing. Or if not writing, I have to spend that time editing or researching or planning. I just have to dedicate that time to writing. So these 2 hours I'm dedicating to the book. So That's how I always did it. And it meant that on days where I was feeling less creative or I was having a bit of writer's block, then at least I knew I'd dedicated that time to getting some words out. And if I hadn't gotten some words out, I'd at least looked over what I'd written. I'd made some edits. I'd planned for upcoming chapters. I think for some people, I think that might be helpful. Others, everyone writes differently. And like I say, most people I know say that they have a word count per day, but that just never worked out for me. So yeah, I would say if you're struggling with word counts, then go for a timed approach, um, just to as an alternative and see how that goes instead.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I have days like that where there's not a lot of creativity, but then instead of beating myself up about that, I can just get through the sort of admin type jobs that all need doing. And you know what your brain can do on different days. And I think it's just being kind to yourself, isn't it? And going with that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Are you working on anything at the moment that you can tell us about?
Other
Um,
than keeping a child alive.
Yeah, probably not.
yeah, that's the main thing. But I'm about two-thirds of the way through a second novel, but it has stalled very much so. It's so I'm leaning more into folk horror with this next novel. Um, so it's set kind of at the end of the 18th century, so kind of the romantic beginning of the romantic era. And it's based on sort of fairy lore, but not the kind of romanticized Victorian fairy lore, more the sort of um, sinister fairy lore of like the Middle Ages. It's set in my home county of Northumberland, and it's about an antiquarian and his wife who unearth a sinister ancient presence in the Northumbrian countryside. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. Like I say, it's more horror based than the foreshore, but it still has a historical setting to ground itself in. And I'm very keen to get through. I think I've been working on that far too long is the problem, because it stalled when I had my daughter. So it's now kind of it's gotten to the point where I'm desperate to finish it, which can be difficult because you want to enjoy writing more than just be desperate to get it done. But I am determined to finish it because afterwards I've got a plan for a third novel, which I'm very, very enthused about, where I'm going to be shifting my focus across to Ireland. And in this case, I'm taking an actual real case from history that I'm going to be writing about. It's a bit more sort of true crime. But it again, it has that kind of folk horror element behind the sort of tone and atmosphere. So yeah, I have got a lot of plans for writing, but like I say, it's very much stalled at the moment. But there will be other books, definitely.
Oh,
Amazing.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they both sound right up my street, so I'm looking forward to seeing those out.
That's great. Hopefully sooner rather than later. I'm aiming for 2027 would be brilliant, if I was being realistic, but we'll see.
Sounds like a good year.
Does sound like a good year, but you take your own advice and give yourself some grace. You
Yeah.
just had a child, so
I'll try. I'm the worst at actually taking my own advice. I'm good at giving it, bad at taking it. So
I think everyone's like that, don't worry.
yeah, yeah.
We always like to finish by asking our guests for a book recommendation. Do you have anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah. I would say the best book I've read recently, like debut. I always like to try and promote other debut writers. The Lamb by Lucy Rose, which again, if you're into unusual, sinister kind of books, again, folk horror, then I would thoroughly recommend it. It's very, very dark and very, very brooding. And if you're into that, then definitely check that out. I'm currently reading a book called The Buffalo Hunter, which I started reading. I mean, again, reading is stalled at the moment. I started reading that around Halloween. It's by Stephen Graham Jones, and it's a vampire horror novel, but it's kind of interesting because it's also a commentary on colonial violence in North America with the Native American population. So it's a really interesting read so far, as well as a good horror read. I haven't finished that one yet, but so far so good. So if it sticks the ending, I would recommend that as well.
Sounds
Amazing. Thank
brilliant.
you.
Yeah. And thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. It's been lovely. And again, thank you for being flexible with arranging a time to speak to me as well.
Oh, absolutely.
That's fine. It's brilliant. It's been great to have you on. So thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thanks. Yeah, again, thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning into the Write Club. We hope you enjoyed this episode and feel inspired to keep writing. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at Writers Online, your go-to for writing tips, competitions, and exclusive updates. Plus, you'll never miss an episode of the Write Club. Until next time, happy writing.